Hi, I'm Femi OK and you're in the stream. Today, what could make Muslim trips to the Holy Land so controversial they divide an entire community? We'll tell you in just a minute. Oh my goodness, this is such a hot topic online right now. We're going to try and give you a little flavour of why this programme, these trips from Muslim Americans to the Holy Land have just ignited literally a Twitter storm online, divided a community. Malika Bilal, what are you seeing there?
And for people that aren't familiar with this controversy, dividing a community seems kind of like an overstatement, but online that's exactly what I'm seeing. This is one of the heated tweets we got. This is from Maysoon Zayed, and she actually writes that instead of just divided, it's disgusted a community. That's just one person's thoughts. We're going to get thoughts on both sides of the divide. We want your help to do that. So you can tweet us your questions, your comments with hashtag AJStream.
And even if you're out and about, you can still take part in the debate. So you can download our new app from the stream by going to the link that you can see at the bottom of this screen. And there you will find quizzes and polls and many other ways for you to share your opinion on this controversial topic. The controversy started when some Muslim Americans were invited by a Jewish organization to visit Israel. The Muslim Leadership Initiative and the Israeli Shalom Hartman Institute partnership arranges for Muslim Americans to, I'm going to quote here, explore how Jews understand Judaism, Israel, and Jewish peoplehood, end of quote. Now, the 13-month-long program includes 2 visits to Israel and Palestine paid for by the Hartman Institute. Critics of this program have been very vocal. They say these trips undermine the Palestinian boycott, divestment and sanctions campaign, also known as BDS. It's a global movement that includes the boycotting of Israeli academic institutions. Also, the Hartman Institute works with the Israeli military and has been linked to funding from anti-Muslim organizations. And the program has been described as an attempt at faith washing, making the conflict in Israel a Muslim-Jewish issue while ignoring the illegal occupation of Palestinians. Meanwhile, people who've actually been on the trip say they're opening up lines of communication and combating Islamophobia. Now, with us to talk about this via Skype in California, we have Kamal Abu Shamsiya. He is a doctoral student at the Graduate Theological Union. He took part in the initiative and he's Palestinian. Zarina Graywall is an assistant professor of American and Religious Studies at Yale University in Connecticut. And in Rhode Island, we have Saeed Afzal. He is a postdoctoral fellow in international studies at Brown University. He is also a Palestinian. So, at what point did you know that this was going to be controversial, Zarina, when you heard about this initiative? What point did you go, oh, that could be trouble?
Well, I've been an activist in the BDS movement for several years, and so when I started hearing even little whispers about the nature of the program, I knew it was going to be a problem. I was hoping it would sort of get tripped up before it even started, because many of the people that they initially invited refused to go, and so I was just hoping against hope that it wouldn't get off the ground, but they sort of beat the bushes and did find, you know, some Muslim individuals who were willing to go. Now, the reason I didn't think it was going to get off the ground was because Palestine is one of the few issues on which there's like near consensus in the American Muslim community. I mean, it's been an issue which across like racial, ethnic, sectarian lines, American Muslims have been supportive of the Palestinian cause. You know, it's been one of the primary kind of issues in which they've given charitable donations. And so, but like any issue, there's not perfect consensus, and so you can, I guess, they were able to find some people that were willing to participate.
And when you heard those whispers, what were those whispers saying? When it's like the Muslim Americans going to the Holy Land?
No. That's not what I heard. What I heard was that the same Muslims that had been attending, Muslim leaders, were being tapped by Abdullah and Tepeli. And the reason I heard about it and before other people did is because I'm actually friends with many of the participants that went.
Okay.
And so they were telling me they were considering it. Of course, I was discouraging them. Oftentimes I was successful. Unfortunately, I wasn't totally successful because many of my friends did attend and participate.
Right. So you heard about it, you were hearing those whispers. Meanwhile, Haroon, you were invited and you actually went on the trip. When did you know that this might cause a problem for you back in your Muslim American community? Did you know when you accepted the invitation or when you got back?
I don't think it's actually caused that much of a problem. To be honest with you, this has not really picked up much really anything outside of, a few activists and voices and Twitter. As a case in point, I decided to write about my experience and pitched it to a lot of mainstream outlets, a number of newspapers, websites, so on and so forth. And they all turned it down. They said, frankly, we don't see where the controversy is or why this is interesting. I think we forget that outside of our small circles, Israel and Palestine doesn't really register on most people's radars. And for most Americans, the idea of going to Israel is not in and of itself controversial. And for most Muslims, I don't think it's controversial either. I mean, I do a lot of work in Muslim communities. I have, since college, so, more than 15 years now. And I continue to do that work.
All right, so
most people I've spoken to about this program have maybe expressed some doubts, but the majority of them have been supportive.
Sure, Haroon Mogul is a grad student. Hold on a minute, Zarina. He's a grad student at Columbia University, and he also obviously went on the trip. Zarina?
Yeah, I was actually also invited to go, I should say, but I declined. And I have to disagree. I mean, it's not about traveling to Israel, which the BDS movement is not opposed to travel to Israel. It's about cooperating with an aggressively Zionist organization, the Shalom Hartman Institute. And Haroon is absolutely right that outside of the American Muslim community, this may not be a big issue, but it's been extremely divisive within the American Muslim community. That's just not from my own social circle. The fact is that there is a petition which 55 American Muslim organizations have signed. I think well over 100 American Muslim leaders have signed, asking the MLI program to desist and saying calling for support of BDS. So within the American Muslim community, this has been an extremely divisive issue, and there's been a huge uproar. And I think that the evidence speaks for itself. I mean, they're actually organized against this program.
Well, Zarina, you mentioned the petition, so of course I'm following this online, and on Twitter this is very big, so I'm going to pull that up on my screen here. This is from In the Occupation. 48 groups, they write, have signed a statement, no to faith washing, what they call, and a boycott of MLI. Of course, that number is going up. This tweet was sent a little while ago, but I want to give us a little bit more information on the background of this trip and do that with this tweet. So Kamal, we got this from someone who said, MLI largely courts South Asian and non-Palestinian Muslims in an attempt to create a schism between Arab and South Asian Muslim communities. Kamal, of course, you were Palestinian yourself and you went on the second trip, but what I have seen online is people saying that on the first trip there weren't any Palestinians, there weren't many non-South Asian members. What do you have to say to that?
The first thing is the issue of Palestine is dear on the mind and hearts of all Muslims, and if I talk directly about American Muslims, it's on the minds and hearts of all Muslims from different communities and ethnicities. The fact that there was no Arabs on the first cohort does not mean that there was no outreach. Keep in mind that many Arabs who have ties to Arab countries that can't have relations with Israel will not be able to go there because their governments might have some backlash against them and their families. On this cohort that I went to, the diversity of the American Muslim community was represented really well. From the Arab countries or Arab backgrounds to African American to Caucasian to Southeast Asian to Latino, the community at large was represented and was beautifully participating.
What did you do, Kamal? What was the program?
What did you do with what?
Yeah, what was the program?
It was an amazing program. I have invested personally over 20 years in Muslim-Jewish relations in national capacity with national mainstream Muslim organizations and interfaith circles. What I could not receive and what was unavailable for me is to understand the mindset of the American Jewish community. Ideologically, politically, let me just finish. Ideologically, politically, and the issues that made that Muslim-Jewish relations unavailable to continue to be a healthy relations. The fellowship allowed me the opportunity to understand what the theology, what's the ideology, what's the psychology, what's the mindset, what are the fears and the hopes of the American Jewish community, and gave me the opportunity to engage with them as well.
Kamal, you mentioned that there were several, you're saying that there's several Arab Americans that went on this trip, the second cohort, because Abdullah Antepali, the organizer of the program, told me himself that he had great difficulty getting any Arabs to participate in the first cohort. In fact, I think Harun is one of the only people that was on the trip that even speaks Arabic. And the reason was not because they were afraid, but because they are politically opposed to what the trip stands for. And, you know, and he told me himself that he was having a great amount of trouble finding any Arabs and certainly any Palestinians to do it. Finding one after beating the bushes and getting one to do it doesn't somehow make it now representative of like a large number of the community. You know, I really have to challenge your claim.
No, I have to jump in here. I'm sorry, but that's inaccurate. I mean, when people are actively dissuading, as Zarina has said, people from participating, then it's not fair to say that it was hard for people to participate. And if you look at the kind of comments that people have volleyed at participants, to the extent that Abdullah Antepali himself has been harassed and threatened, has security at his house, this kind of immature overreaction that we've seen among a subset of activists, it's not surprising that Palestinians wouldn't want to go.
All right, so
Harun,
can you just slow
you don't think it has something to do with the Israeli occupation,
that Palestinians don't want to go, and then they're being attacked and they're being harassed and they're being insulted, why would they want to go?
Harun, you don't think that it has something to do with the politics?
And conducive to that kind of participation. And the reality is that the deeper problem here is that we are demonstrating an inability to disagree reasonably and calmly and rationally. That people have different approaches to the same problem, and that's fine.
I'm going to guess Zarina, Harun, and Kamal. Just take a breath for a moment, because Syed, I would like to bring you into the conversation. Go ahead, Syed.
Yeah, thank you so much for having this conversation. I have to say that I'm quite disturbed by what I've heard so far. First of all, Harun is completely underestimating and understating the importance of Palestine for broader American audiences and people of conscience around the world who care about justice. Israel is an apartheid state. It is enacting settler colonialism, ethnic cleansing, and military occupation. And just like apartheid South Africa, there's a global boycott call of Israeli institutions that are complicit in the occupation. The Shalom Hartman Institute is one of those institutions that is boycottable. This movement is global. It is across the United States. I'm a member of the Peace and Justice Studies Association. 87% of members have just endorsed the academic boycott of Israel. This is a huge movement, and to underplay the movement, I think, is ludicrous. Also, to characterize critics of this movement as being quote-unquote irrational and extremist. These are incredibly thoughtful people, from NYU's Imam Khalid Latif to Dr. Hatem Bazian at Berkeley, Sheikh Omar Suleiman, Rama Khudemi, Saeed,
all these names, all these names you're reading off, the significance for our international audience is what?
Yeah, these are all very well-respected members of the American Muslim community.
All right.
But even beyond the community, as I said,
yes,
many U.S. academic professional associations, the American Studies Association, with 5,000 members, have endorsed the academic boycott of Israel, which the MLI program is violating.
All right, Syed, take a breath. Kamal.
Yes, with all due respect to those individuals, this issue is not about Palestine. This issue is about the American Muslim community, about its existence, its strength, its future in Islam, future in the United States. The program is not about addressing the Palestinian-Israeli conflict. All the organizations that you have, hold on, all the information that you have presented so far about the critics, the individuals and the organizations have only was able to carry fringe relations with fringe elements of the Jewish community. They have rejected the mainstream Jewish community, and they have put themselves outside of the mainstream Muslim community, holding Muslim-Jewish relations between American Muslim for Palestine and Natori Karta, we're not going to hold and uphold the significance and more advanced relations of the American Muslim community forward.
Kamal, if I could just for a moment, I want to bring in the community, just so hold tight for a second, Malika.
Well, it's really just picking up on that because, Kamal, people online are saying that this wasn't about Jewish-Muslim relations. This was about something else. So I'd like you all to have a listen to this video comment we got and let me know what you think.
One of the major issues with this trip is that it seeks to conflate Zionism with Judaism, as if the two are inextricably intertwined, and that's not the case. Defenders of it also say that they went on the trip in order to truly understand what Zionism means. And my response to that is, if you want to understand what Zionism means, you don't do that by touring with those who espouse the ideology and who defend it. You do it by visiting independently or as a journalist or through other means, those who are suffering with its consequences.
I saw you nodding your head there. Kamal?
To think, yes, I'm listening. I would say it's delusional to think that Zionism is the same as Judaism. However, those who don't understand the impact of Zionism on the American Jewish community also are ignorant, because the overwhelming majority of the American Jewish community is Zionist. So in order to engage the American Jewish community, it's imperative that we understand the various forms of the Zionism. Zionism is not a monolithic, and Zionism is an ideology, it's not a faith, yet impacting many in the Jewish community.
If I could just say, yes, Zionism is not a monolithic movement. There are many forms of Zionism. However, the dominant form of Zionism in Israel, which is, promoted by the government, is militaristic. It's a colonial occupation. It's profoundly racist. It's deeply problematic. So yes, that's not the only Zionism that there is, but that's the Zionism that the BDS movement is opposed to. And if I could just go back a moment, to say that there was another group of they're called the Dream Defenders and several other several other black social movements that went together on a trip that overlapped with the MLI trip. They visited Israel. They engaged in a number of dialogues. However, they did not violate BDS. They were aligning themselves with the Palestinians, and so to suggest that we somehow are opposed, your critics are somehow emotional and irrational and opposed to dialogue and opposed to visiting Israel. I personally am helping to organize a conference that will take place there without...
Serena, take a breath. We hear your point beautifully. Harun, go ahead.
So, one of the reasons I went is because I work in American foreign policy. And while I appreciate that many American academic organizations have bravely and in many ways rightly sanctioned participation with Israel, the reality is outside of American academia, Israel is a reality. Most Americans view Israel positively. And if you work in government, if you work in foreign policy, if you work in the corporate sector, if you work in media, you have to build relationships with American Jewish organizations, and you have to understand them. Now, the unfortunate thing here is that we agree on many of the realities, and we agree on many of the outcomes. There may be differences in how we perceive bringing an end to the occupation and bringing about a peaceful solution. For me, who worked in foreign policy, it was very important for me to understand mainstream Israeli Zionism. One of the projects I worked on in foreign policy was bringing together the United States and Iran about the nuclear talks, about overcoming years of hostility, and one of the sticking points really was Israel and America's relationship to Israel.
Okay.
Now, I've been to Israel and Palestine before, and I understand the conflict very, very, very well. But in order to do the work that I do, and for my own reasons for going, it was very important for me to understand mainstream Israeli Zionism. That's the reason why I went. It's impossible to intervene in a conflict, one that our country is so closely implicated in, without understanding the actors on the ground.
All right, so what I'm hearing, guests, just give me a moment, because we've got 5 minutes. I want to use this 5 minutes in a particular way. What I'm hearing right now is a very intelligent, intellectual debate about why or why not people should have gone and taken part in this program. This intellectual debate was not necessarily carried on online, and the backlash is kind of unbelievable. Kamal, can you give me a sense of what people have been saying to you online, the kind of pushback that you've been getting for being on this trip?
The first thing, it's always important to separate facts from opinions. Opinions are respected, but there is no negotiations over facts. The first thing, no one was brainwashed. No one was duped.
Kamal, I want to give our international audience an idea of this conversation online and the kind of pushback that you've been getting. Let's just cut to the chase. Can you share that with us?
The only backlash I received that basically saying that I'm not an authentic Palestinian voice, and that is ludicrous. The issue is anyone
That's
can
not
go
the
to
problem. That's not the critique. The critique is that you on Facebook claimed that all these Palestinian activists had welcomed you, and then they had to come, which was a lie, and they had to come forward and say publicly, no, in fact, yes, you were at our doorstep, we let you in. However, we are completely opposed to the MLI program and anything that breaks BDS. And then you backpedal. That's what the backlash is. That's the story online.
The political climate they live in doesn't allow them to say that.
All right,
and then these are individuals who have dedicated their lives to the BDS movement. Are you kidding me? These are people who have publicly...
All right, everybody's talking at once. I'm going to override all of you, including Haroon, and then just hand it over to Malika.
Well, I'm going to break in there because I heard the word BDS, and that is kind of at the central heart of this debate. I'm seeing a lot of that online. Tweets look like this. Namira says, respect the picket line. Another person writes in, the BDS call is simple and clear. Those who seek to undermine and violate it claim it's complex. Of course, this is the boycott, divestment, and sanctions program that Palestinian leaders have gotten behind and other activists have gotten behind. So Saad, I'm wondering about your thoughts on this, on whether or not this was people crossing a picket line.
Absolutely. I mean, I believe in interfaith dialogue. I believe in engagement. I believe in intellectual exchange. But at the same time, we have to be ethical. You can't go to apartheid South Africa when Black South Africans have called for a boycott of South African institutions and violate that. Similarly with Palestine, you can't go to Palestine with Zionist Israeli institutions that are complicit in the horrible status quo.
You're wrong is because
the Shalom Hartman
Institute did not end in South Africa.
May I finish my...
Sahed, multi-pronged strategy.
May I finish what I was saying?
Sahed and Haroon, both of you stop talking for a moment. Haroon, just give me a moment. I will allow you in. All right, Sahed, I've got less than 2 minutes. Finish your sentence.
Thank you so much. So the Shalom Hartman Institute is a boycottable institution. Their research fellows justified the killing of civilians in Gaza. Their 2013 report talks about how they undermine the Palestinian...
Sahed, is that the end of your sentence? It has to be, right?
Yeah, they receive Islamophobic funds from the Russell Burney Foundation. Their president is anti-BDS. This is an institution that is undermining...
And Haroon gets the last word for this part of the conversation before we move on to the post-show. Haroon?
Sure. Shalom Hartman never asked us to take any position. They never asked us to reject BDS. I, for one, support the economic boycott of Israel. I'm not against that. I am for that. I, however, do not believe in academic or cultural boycotts because I believe they're self-defeating. And it's historically inaccurate to say that apartheid in South Africa was ended through BDS alone. And any community should have a multi-pronged approach to doing what we all, I think, agree to do, which is end the occupation and find a peaceful solution that accommodates the rights of all the people who live in Israel and Palestine and the people who deserve to live there because they are refugees who have been expelled from there.
All right, so you're listening to Haroon Mogul. We also have Sahed Atshun, Kamal Abu Shamsia, and Zarina Greyvor in this conversation, plus you as well. If you come to the post show, stream.aljazeera.com is where we're heading to. Let me tell you about the next AJ stream before we do that. We promised you we'd feature a topic from our Latin American open editorial last week, and we are going to deliver. So, Brazil is often thought of as a melting pot of ethnicities, but is racial inequality simmering just below the surface? Send us your thoughts. You can tweet us, #AJStream. Malika will be waiting for your tweets. Until then, we'll see you on the post show. Stream.aljazeera.com. Thanks for watching. Hello again, welcome back to the Streams Online Post Show. We're continuing our discussion on controversy surrounding the Muslim Leadership Initiative as a program sending Muslim Americans on educational trips to Israel. Now, one of the issues that's been discussed around this trip is a term known as faith washing. Let me see, Saed, how would you interpret that? What is that criticism about?
Well, absolutely. The MLI program is a form of faith washing and should be boycotted because Israel is an apartheid state that's trying to improve its image all around the world. Instead of improving its human rights record, it whitewashes its record. So it targets the LGBT community with pink washing, the African American communities with black washing, and it uses this kind of interfaith dialogue as a way to whitewash its crimes. So this is a perfect example of Israel's attempts to do that.
Kamal, did you feel you were being used?
I think that ludicrous. I wish he was there to see how my African American colleagues challenged Jewish scholars of the Bible on the issue of liberation theology, to the point that the scholars said, we'll come back with you to an answer. Our group was highly intelligent to assume otherwise will be really defeating defeating anything that we stand for as academics. The only challenge that I witnessed personally in the interactions were sometimes inability of some of the colleagues to reflect on the Bible, on the verses that really enhance the Zionist narrative of Palestine without bringing their own Muslim identity. I, as a seminarian, addressed the issue first from a biblical perspective and offered the narrative also from biblical perspective and linked that to the plight of the Palestinians and challenged the participants as well as those who are leading the discussion on the application of such narratives on the Palestinian people. So how
did that go down, Kamal?
It was wonderful.
For you or for them?
To have a scholar of the Bible say, I don't have the answer, I'll come back with you. And my colleague to say, please do. That is nothing that can be described as faith washing. That was a cordial discussion on issues that we disagree on, and I just wish that my colleagues here in the American Muslim community will be able to have a civilized discussion as well.
First of all, I just want to say that my fellow activists in the BDS movement, many of them are Jews. I interact with Jews all the time. The MLI program is spinning it as though they're the only Muslims that are on the cutting edge of speaking to Jews. The BDS movement is full of Jews and led by Jews. So that is first of all is really a terrible framing of the issue. Secondly, when I asked during the massacre in Gaza, I asked repeatedly MLI participants, so if after a year of building rapport with your colleagues at the Shalom Hartman Institute, can you convince even one of them to make even a mild criticism of the massacre? And they admitted, Abdullah and Tepeli admitted to me point blank that they were not able to do so. So and another participant said to me, well, at least they've learned about the 5 pillars and something about Islamic theology. What is the value of that? These are things they can learn on Wikipedia. You don't need to break BDS to teach them about basic facts about Islam. And there's other ways to do that without violating BDS. I mean, given how much turmoil this program has caused in the American Muslim community, I don't understand why these dialogues can't be constructed in a way that doesn't break BDS. And Abdullah and Tepeli has refused. Humaira Ziad, which was one of the initial organizers of the program, is open to reorganizing the program such that it does not violate BDS. She told me that, and I wrote about that in an article for Jadaliyah. But other people within the program have been totally resistant to revising their program in such a way as to that it will not violate BDS and will not violate the request of the majority of Palestinians to please cooperate with us on BDS.
All right, Serena, take a breath. You need to take a breath. Everybody, take a breath for a second, because this conversation is also going online as well. Malika.
Well, there's an interesting thread that I'm seeing online, Femi, and that is from Palestinians themselves, from other Arabs. This is what it looks like. This is from Layla Al-Haddad, Gaza mom, she's known by on Twitter. She says, I say no to faith washing, which is a term that was brought up and you've heard by now, because Israel bars my husband and I from entering our own country, the land of our ancestors. So that leads me to this interesting tweet. tweet. And Haroon, I'm going to direct this one to you. This is from Rama online, and she says, maybe the issue is Israel won't let Arabs and Palestinians in, and I would say easily, because often they're allowed in, just not very easily. Ask him about the special treatment they got at the airport. Haroon, how did this visit differ from previous visits when you've gone? Because you mentioned that you had gone before.
Yeah, I mean, when I went the first time, it was during an intifada, which was an uprising against the Israeli occupation, you know, the practice of colonialism, which is basically the history of Zionism. You know, the thing we're missing here is that, you know, this is a trip I went on as an American for American purposes. And the reality is that my country has very strong and deep relationships with Israel, including the Israeli military. And my religious community, the American Muslim community, is a very talented community. It's a rising community that has a lot of potential. And rather than
Haroon, I hate to cut you off there, but just because of limited time, I really want to get this tweet question answered, because I'm curious myself. She's asking specifically on your experience getting in, your experience at the airport, at the border, whether or not it was easier now than it's been in the past.
We were treated in many cases just as other Palestinians were. We were there when Aqsa was locked down, when we were not allowed onto the Haram. We were there. I was in a crowd of hundreds of Palestinians, and we were forced to pray, basically penned in, surrounded by Israeli soldiers who had their fingers on the triggers the entire time. Of course, that for me is a brief experience. It's not the reality of what Palestinians have to live every day. And that's something we were all aware of because we traveled through Palestinian communities. Many of us know Palestinians, and we are well aware of the conflict. The difference here is not a disagreement about what Palestinians are experiencing. It's a disagreement over what the best approach is to intervene. That's why I talked about American foreign policy. I think we as Americans can do a lot, and American Muslims can do a lot to intervene in the foreign policy decisions our country makes if we get more involved. And this, for me, was about opening the door to more Muslims in government, more Muslims in policy conversations, more Muslims in media who are able to draw attention to these realities. Now, the fact is, BDS is a valuable approach. I'm not criticizing it. I'm saying it's not for everyone, and it shouldn't be our only approach. We as a community need multiple strategies to deal with multiple sectors.
I'm not saying I'm the only take a breath for a moment, because Kamal was leaning forward as you were speaking. I know Kamal wanted to respond to that idea about how you were treated on this particular trip. Special treatment?
As a Palestinian American, I was denied entry into Israel in 2005. I have parents that still live in Ramallah and the extended family. Since 2005 up till now, I travel to Jordan and cross the border crossing because I still maintain a Palestinian residency or a Palestinian passport. For this trip, and specifically after arrangement with Shalom Hartman, I was allowed to enter as an American, issued a visa. If that reflects the impotence of the policy of the State of Israel, that use of security, that barring Palestinian Americans from entering really has no credibility. When I visited Ramallah, to go and see my parents on the way back, I was also denied entry into Jerusalem, saying that I do have a Palestinian ID card, I need to return. So this kind of treatment, we see the same thing also upon entry into our own country here with a no-fly list and the secondary screening. The idea is, I'm not here to say anything about the occupation, but an ugly that needs to end. To prosecute your fellow American and equating them with faith washing, I think that cannot fly.
All right, let me play you something. I'm going to play this for Zarina here. This is the project director, the Imam. He's a project director of the Muslim Leadership Initiative. We asked him literally about, I don't know, 45 minutes ago, an hour ago, what do you make of your critics? This is what he said.
I'm having a hard time respecting and welcoming those attacks and criticism based on non-factual information, based on assumptions, based on intention reading, based on what people assume what the program is all about. That I'm having a hard time respecting.
Zarina is basically saying you don't have your facts right, and he doesn't respect your criticism.
I don't think that's what he's saying, actually, because Abdullah and Tapali just friended me on Facebook, a few minutes ago. We are actually
He's
friends.
obviously watching the show, doesn't want to be your enemy.
We are friends. He, congratulated me when I just had a baby. I mean, many of them.
So what is he saying? He doesn't respect them. What is he not respecting? He told us that about an hour ago.
I have never read anyone's intentions. I've never insulted anyone publicly. My criticisms are political. I have a great amount of respect for Harun Moghul, and I consider him a friend. Same thing goes for Abdullah and Tepley. Same thing goes for many of the participants in this cohort and the previous cohort. I'll have a cup of tea with them any day of the week. But on this issue, I think they're wrong. And I have done my absolute best to articulate that criticism in a way that is not hurtful or insulting or challenges their character. I actually think,
you have managed to do that, but many other people haven't. I want to show you this here. Zara Bilou, how does one move forward from this level of attack from within the community? There is, I mean, this is a huge debate. I'm not sure that people are still friends anymore who used to be friends. These were supposed to be Muslim thought leaders. What do you make of what's happened in your own Muslim American community?
You know, I've written about this. I do think that the debate degenerated when people start saying that everyone who went on MLI is a Zionist. That's certainly not the case. Harun is absolutely right. I think we can all agree that we are all on the side of the Palestinians. The question is how best to support the Palestinians. All right,
so we've done that for 45 minutes. I really care though about a community that seemed to be tearing itself apart.
Yeah, can I jump
over
on
a trip?
Look, I mean, I've spent 15 years studying the American Muslim community, and I have ideas about how we can get past this conflict. I'm very pained personally to see the way our community is suffering because of this issue that the MLI has caused. And frankly, we are a resource-poor community, so we can't afford to lose 24 Muslim American leaders because they went on this trip. I would like to see
What do you mean by lose? This
reconciliation.
sounds very sinister.
In other words, they have
lose?
lost so much street credibility. And I think it's very damaging. I think it's very damaging. And I think that's very unfortunate.
Okay, all right, Harun.
One of the saddest things about what happened here, and it really says a lot about why the American Muslim community is so ineffectual, is that when the war on Gaza was happening, what were we doing? We were tearing each other apart. People were insulting each other, attacking each other. I'm not speaking about Zarina. I'm not speaking about people like Hatem Bazian, for example. I am speaking about, folks who came up with the term faith washing without interviewing anyone, making it up as they went along. What I'm talking about is this tendency among some to inflame conflicts at a time when we should be cooperating. We don't have to agree. The funny thing here is actually, I think Zarina is right for her context. I think as an academic, as a scholar, as someone who's written widely on American Islam, who at a very prestigious university among the most prestigious in the world, she's doing what she should be doing, and it makes sense.
Right.
But for the work I do and the position I'm in, this makes sense.
We don't have this quality of debate going on online and within the Muslim American community.
And we're attacking each other.
Where's the Band-Aid going to come from, Harun?
During Gaza, and we attacked each other.
Right.
We made our community look completely useless and ineffectual. Imagine if you were at a place like the White House Iftar and you were trying to lobby for your own causes, and what do people see when they look you up online? They see a community that's tearing itself apart. And in a sad way, we were mirroring the wider Muslim world. We just fight all the time.
I mean, Zarina was talking as if you were lost to the community. Harun, do you feel that you are lost to the community? 1 second, guess, and then you can have at it. Do you feel you're lost to the community? It's like, it would be a shame to lose these half-dozen Muslim thought leaders. I mean, that sounds like pretty disastrous. Do you feel you're lost?
I think I'm doing fine. I continue to speak with Muslim communities. I continue to do my work. I continue to write. I've built new relationships through this. Almost every single person I've talked to, on the phone or in person, because social media generally is not conducive to this kind of conversation. The majority of them, the overwhelming majority of them, support me in what I did, even if they were initially very critical. And those who didn't are respectfully disagreeing. In the same way that Zarina is very respectfully critical. She has every right to disagree. I understand where she's coming from. I don't think she's correct about it, but that's fine. And these are healthy debates. This is a healthy conversation.
All right.
The unhealthy conversation is where we attack each other.
Yeah, I understand. I'm going to give the last word literally to Syed. Syed, they're about to turn the internet off for this show. So do be brief. Go ahead.
I just wanted to say that it's important to bring Palestinians back into the equation. When you visit Palestine and you violate the BDS call, the call to boycott Israeli institutions complicit in the occupation, you are offending Palestinian civil society, women's groups, LGBT groups, youth movement, agricultural associations, labor unions. There is near consensus in Palestinian civil society that when you visit Israel, Palestine, please come, bear witness to our suffering, stand in solidarity with us, but do not do so at the dime of Zionist Israeli institutions that are complicit in the status quo. So we have to put Palestinian voices front and center in this equation.
This is what respectful disagreement sounds like. Thank you, Haroon, Saed, Kamal and Zarina. Malika, what is the online community saying?
I will give you the last words from people on Twitter. This is from Rihanna, who says, there's nothing wrong with dialogue, no matter who it's with. So that's someone who is pro the MLI trips. On the other hand, though, this is kind of summing up what Saad said a little bit earlier. This is from Dawood Walid, and he says, that's fine, but go to Jerusalem on your own dime and learn for yourself, not funded by money, funded by a foundation, excuse me, that gives money to what he says are Islamophobes.
I can feel the guests all have so much more to say. Guests, we're wrapping it up, but we can also take it online. Thank you so much for your time on today's program. Now, as we move ahead to the next AJ stream, we promised you a topic pitched by a member of the stream community, and we are going to do it. If you remember last week, the Chala Editorial, or the Latin America Open Editorial, well, we're going to be doing one of those topics. Brazil is often thought of as a melting pot of ethnicities, but is racial inequality just simmering under the surface? Tweet us your thoughts, and then we will tackle that topic in the next AJ stream. See you soon.